Hi, and welcome back to Bold Books and Bones. This episode is called Old Books and One Disaster. And therefore, I would like to show you something. It is one of the most beautiful things I caught on camera so far. Are you ready? Here we go. It seems like nothing's happening, but please keep on watching. Any moment now. This is the Abbey of the beautiful Mont Saint-Michel. It's a tiny island in Normandy, in the north of France. For centuries, this place is protected by the tides. When it's low tide, it is hard to visit the island because there's quicksand everywhere, even today. When the tide is high, pilgrims could only visit the island by boat. Now there is one road that connects the island with the mainland. I visited this place with my wife a while ago. We got up very early to see the sunrise over this beautiful scenery. And if you have young kids, you can tell them that the castle in the Disney movie Tangled was inspired by this place. Anyhow, back to the story. I like to visit these special places because they're beautiful and it's very relaxing here. And of course, I like these places because of their long tradition of reading, copying and preserving books. For many centuries, the Abbey of Mont Saint-Michel owned an extensive library. Unfortunately, only 205 manuscripts and a bit more than 1,000 old printed books that were coming from the Abbey survive today. Most of these books are now in the library of Avranches, not far from the island. It is because of places like this Abbey that old books were preserved throughout time and ultimately released back to humanity. Now, why would we read old books or even care about them? Because these books contain the fundamental building blocks of all the knowledge that we have today. Throughout time, the information that these old books contained was read, was studied, was corrected, was enhanced, or proven totally wrong. But they were the basic blocks of information on which all our knowledge is built today. And that is why I like to read some of these old books. Because I like to understand what some of these early authors had to say about subjects that are of interest to me. Some of these old books contain very surprising information that might even today change the way we think about a certain topic. Let me give you an example. You probably recognize this. And so on and so forth. These are of course the opening lines of the first track of the famous masterpiece called Carmina Burana, composed by Karl Orff. The English translation of these opening lines goes something like this. O fortune, like the moon, ever changing, you always wax or wane, hateful life, and so on and so forth. In my ignorance, I thought that the Carmina Burana was a music composition. However, this music, or better, its lyrics, come from a book from the 13th century called the Carmina Burana. The book still exists and sits in the Bayerische Staatsbibliothek in Munich, in Germany. Now, Christopher de Hamel, which is one of the world's leading experts in manuscripts, visited the book and observed some very interesting things. One of the pages of the book that he studied is this one, which can be found at the beginning of the book. From his study we learn that the famous sentences, O Fortuna and so on that we just discussed, are not at all the opening sentences of the song. They are not the beginning of the text at all. This page was apparently cut out somewhere else from the manuscript and transferred to the beginning of the book. This was most probably done to provide a more decorative opening of the book. Since this page contains a drawing of what is called the Wheel of Fortune. So the book is not in its original state. You can actually see an artistic version of that very Wheel of Fortune on the cover of the CD of Karl Orff. So the beginning of the song is not the beginning. Additionally, you can see on the page that these famous words of O Fortuna are here at the foot of the page. However, according to Christopher de Hamel, they are not even part of the original manuscript, but they were added later, and that's why they are so crammed together on the page. And if we look at the drawing of Fortuna, and this is a topic that is close to my heart because in my work as a leadership coach, Fortuna plays a very important role in how leaders can be successful, then we learn from Christopher de Hamel that this is not Fortuna at all. And he is right, because Fortuna is normally depicted as a woman and not as a man like on this drawing. And here is one of the many examples. This is a Fortuna depicted on a reproduction of the famous Visconti Sforza cards from the 15th century. And as you can see, it is a woman, not a man. So why is there suddenly a man drawn on the Wheel of Fortune in this early work of the 13th century? Christopher de Hamel gives in his work an elaborative explanation of what is really shown in this image. And I just like his eye for detail and the ease in the way he explained things. We learn from Christopher de Hamel that the Carmina Burana consists of about 350 poems, and that only 20 of them were set to music by Karl Orff. The poems talk about girls and about love, and there is even a poem that talks about falling gently asleep after making love. There are satirical and moral songs and a lot of drinking songs. All this made me curious, so I ordered a copy of a full English translation of the Carmina Burana. Furthermore, we learn from de Hamel that the book dates from the 13th century, but that it was only rediscovered in 1803 in a monastic library in Benedict-Boyan in Bavaria, Germany. And that is where the book got its name from. Carmina Burana means songs from Benedict-Boyan. The music by the German composer Karl Orff was finished in 1936 and was performed for the first time in 1937 in Nazi Germany. So suddenly the music also gets a political twist. So if we go back to the old and only version of the Carmina Burana, then I learned that it is not what I always thought it was. And that time can transform the information or even transform the intention of what these early authors wanted to share. And that is why I'm fascinated by these old books, because they always give you a new insight or at least a new perspective on a topic that you're passionate about. Unfortunately, we can't read them all. And on top of it, many of these old books are written in a language that I do not master. And that is why I like to read books about books. And the one that I'm showing here is of course by Christopher de Hamel, and it's called Meetings with Remarkable Manuscripts, 12 Journeys into the Medieval World. As I said earlier, Christopher de Hamel is one of the world's leading experts in manuscripts. And he's the kind of person who wants to know everything about these ancient books. And in his book, he brings us closer to 12 medieval manuscripts. Each chapter is a separate story, and we have the privilege to look at these old books through the eyes of a master observer. What at first looked like an old handwritten text on animal skin becomes in this book a compelling and informative story full of surprises. Among the 12 manuscripts that he talks about are, next to the Carmina Burana, also the Book of Kells, which is one of the beautiful national symbols of Ireland. And he also talks about the Morgan Beatus, a book about the apocalypse or the end of times, written in the 10th century. By revisiting these old books with the help of an expert, they become accessible again. I enjoyed so much reading this book called Meetings with Remarkable Manuscripts. Christopher de Hamel is not only a passionate expert, but also he has the great skill of telling the stories of these ancient books in a compelling way. So I very much recommend this book. And I hope to see you soon in part 2 of the episodes called Old Books and One Disaster. Thank you for watching. And if you like this channel, then please subscribe, leave a thumbs up or leave a comment. I'm looking forward to see you soon at Bold Books and Bones. Bye.